Welcome to another episode of Cyber Oinks. Today we have Dvir Geva. Dvir is an experienced CISO, sorry. He started his career in the military. He then went through the trenches of several different IT and software development roles, as well as cybersecurity roles. Today he's really pushing in the CISO space, working with several different cybersecurity frameworks and making sure companies are on a good roadmap, let's say, from a strategic point of view when it comes to their cybersecurity management. So thank you, Dvir, for joining us today. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great opportunity to share views and hopefully promote some cybersecurity decisions to be taken. Let's get to it.
I forgot to mention, Dvir, you are in South Africa, Cape Town.
Yeah.
A beautiful place right here.
Indeed. Indeed. Beautiful
All right.
place from Table Mountain to the two oceans meeting here. Beautiful.
Okay, great. So it seems like I understand why you're always so positive and in a good mood, because it's easier to live in a place that's really nice and beautiful.
Yes, and we're
All
heading
right.
to summer, which is also great.
That's nice. Perfect. Okay, so today what we're doing is 12 questions for experts. Just to briefly summarize the concept, something I ran into some time ago is there are topics and areas of focus in cybersecurity where I was surprised to learn people have very different opinions about things, even though these are fairly fundamental things, let's say, when it comes to cybersecurity, around how cybersecurity should be managed, what are good practices, what are good ways to prioritize things. So I based this 12 questions podcast around that, basically. And so that's what we're going to be doing today together here. We're going to look into those questions and we're going to see what your point of view is, basically.
Perfect.
I do have one testing question before we actually get into it, because I want to make sure before we start that you actually do get the concept and that you can answer the questions the way I want it. The concept is you always get it's always a multiple choice. There's always a yes or no, or maybe a couple of different options, and you have to pick one, because cybersecurity is about setting priorities, right? And you can't prioritize, I'm going to do everything. That's just not how the world works. So my testing question is, if you had to pick, which one would you rather watch? A UFC fight or a full game of World Cross?
A UFC fight.
Okay, and why?
Just more exciting. I do have martial arts in my family, not me directly.
Okay.
Spent some time traveling with my son, who is a taekwondo warrior representing the country. So yeah, that's kind of the
Okay,
natural
nice. Fun thing to learn. Okay, cool. So we did the test. Now we can get into the actual questions. So first question, it's about BYOD and managed devices. There's a lot of different opinions about this. Some people are on the side of you should only really allow managed devices into the environment. Other people say, well, you need to let BYOD devices for whatever reason, and it is just about setting the right security policy. What is your opinion on this?
It is tricky, but I would say that first, as the choice from cybersecurity manager point of view, I would obviously prefer everything to be managed. I can set the rules, I can set the tone, everything that I know what to expect, and I know also how to detect anomalies. But organizations that thought that they are fine with just doing managed devices ended up with severe incidents. If we take, for example, the best example is Uber, which they had employee from home, actually, just quickly trying to, I think it was to commit changes on Git. And
Mhm.
he used the device at home that was compromised, and his credentials ended up being recorded by the keylogger. And that was the beginning of a
Mhm.
huge incident. So if you set your policies, if you work everything for a BYOD, then you're more equipped with the real world.
Mhm.
I would also say that, unfortunately or fortunately, depends how you look at it. Even if you manage all the computers and you issue computers and everything is company owned, we have the problem of all of the mobile devices. So if as a company, you're not going and starting to say, okay, so I give you the mobile device and I give you the laptop and you don't not touch anything else, etc., etc. It's today very difficult to maintain a manage devices only mentality, because
Mhm.
BYOD is so rooted in everything that we do. We want to solve problems and we want to solve it with whatever we have in our hands. So I would say as a company, rather go for BYOD and manage it correctly.
Mhm. Thank you. Um, any cybersecurity professional will tell you cybersecurity is about three things. It's about people, process, and technology. Now, since we are talking about prioritizing and focusing, what do you feel like is the one thing out of these three that companies should focus on the most?
It's the people. It's definitely the people. In this one, I don't need to debate and to bring other options. I think that everything else just complements um, maybe a possible failure or a snag, something that will go wrong in the people layer, if we call it that way. Um, but the people is what we count on. Should the other controls fail, they will be
Mhm.
the ones that running through the incident response. They will be the one to contain an incident, and
Mhm.
they are also the ones that usually their failure is the beginning of an incident, but they also hold the power to prevent incidents, to not fall
Mhm.
for the phishing, to be more aware. So if I go on a very, very low budget and I need to say, what is the first thing I'm working on? I want to educate, first of all, give a basic understanding to all of my staff and stakeholders. So then it also forms the culture and the um, ground that when I ask for something to be done, when I want to implement technology later, they understand why. So the people is kind of, I would say, rooted the why. It's a connection to the business. It's why we do everything that later we need their cooperation.
Mhm. I just want to add one little thing here. Uh, about 2 weeks ago, I was listening to a very interesting presentation that was talking about cybersecurity culture. Um, and I have to say one of the key things that the presenter mentioned was you can't expect that cybersecurity will be something that you just sort of leave out to the CISO and then sort of it's just going to be dealt with, right? It's got to be something that is really ingrained in the culture of the organization, just as safety, for example, should be, right? Um, it has to be something that's not only a checkbox that you do once a year when you're doing your training processes,
Yeah,
but
I
it's got to be
couldn't agree
something that
more.
people are living with and are very, very aware of.
Definitely, it's
Um,
I usually I say that it's kind of the ethics of dealing with data.
mhm. Yeah, I think that's a very good, interesting,
If you want to deal with data in ethical way, it has to be with a strong cybersecurity approach.
mhm. Absolutely. um, I did want to ask you, because we didn't get a chance to talk about this before. Um, do you have a lot of experience with managed services providers?
Not that great. I tend more to focus on locally sourced and not that great with outsourcing services. However, I do understand that it is definitely a need, and every company has it somewhere in their ecosystem um, because it helps us to bridge the gaps that we have in the organization. So
Yeah,
it is important,
because
but
the next question that I wanted to ask you is about managed services providers. Um, what often happens, and this is especially true in the US, is that managed services providers manage mostly the IT of their clients, and to the client, this often gives off the impression that because part of that IT is here and there a few cybersecurity tools, it gives off the impression that the managed services provider is indeed, in fact, managing their cybersecurity as well.
yeah.
The question is quite simple: is this in line with your experience as well? And this doesn't have to be an external organization, saying that we're managing your security. It could even be a small team within an organization that's managing IT, and the client is being the rest of the organization is under the impression that they're taking care of the cybersecurity and that they're okay with this. Now, the question is this your experience as well? Is this how you see many organizations working, or is this sort of something that's in your experience is just marginal and not very common?
No, I think that this is very right. We have that, I would say, with many organizations that are early in their maturity. They basically implement if we go back to the people process technology, then the MSPs is where the technology is actually. They deploy the
Yeah.
tools, they manage the tools. And I see often companies that when I start to talk with them about cybersecurity, the first answer is, don't worry, we are sorted. We have everything that we need. And then you
Yeah.
start to talk and you understand that what they actually mean is that they have an EDR or they have some kind of managed in the good examples, it's managed antivirus that is installed on the endpoints.
Mhm.
But when you ask any question about really getting into it, working with the GRC and implementing the processes of cybersecurity or the compliance of cybersecurity within the organization, you find that often that they were not aware of that existence even.
Yeah.
So it is not necessarily, this is, I think, kind of a little bit of an industry flaw that we have.
Mhm.
Cybersecurity in the big organization, in the regulated ones, they are given these regulations and they know that they have to comply with that. At the very least, they need to appoint a CISO, and the CISO hopefully coming and saying that comes with these requirements. I
Yeah.
hope that we're dealing with people that are ethical, and when they hold the position, they actually hold also the responsibility of that. But if we go a little bit down, if we go to the SMEs, it is very common that they're not aware of this world of compliance, corporate governance that they need to do. And then when that antivirus fails, they basically sitting and waiting for some miracle to happen, for the IT team to come and recreate all of their systems.
And we
And
know what to do now.
yeah, that means can mean the um, devastating for. I wouldn't say for the company. The experience shows that most of the companies recovered well, even when they were not ready. But it definitely means a longer interruption, bigger losses and somewhat damage to the trust between the organizations, these companies, and their customers.
Mhm. When it comes to cybersecurity, what do you think companies should master first? Prevention or response?
Response.
And
Response,
why?
because with prevention, you can't have an 100%, but you can be ready for 100% of the incidents. So you always have the catch all. And if it was an incident we didn't prepare, what then we do? So I would say if you need to start with one thing, work on your incident response plan. Make sure that that is up to date, robust enough, allows for more than what you thought about,
Mhm.
and then start to work your way backwards. You will also have more opportunity to probably test it and tabletop and everything in order to make it better. But it's the one thing that you guarantee that as an organization, you will not end up in a panic mode.
Mhm. Now, we already talked about this slightly before when we were talking about people, process, and technology. I do want to ask you about prioritizing, or what are your thoughts when we talk about cyber education and cyber technology? Um, but this time, I want to focus a little bit on um, what should take the lead as we go forward in the future with organizational cyber defenses. Is the future of cyber readiness more about cyber education, do you think, in the future, or is it more about cyber technology?
So as any gap, I hope that one day we'll close the gap, and then we'll have more people aware, and we will be able to focus on other things, and maybe even just the business, or more focus on the business. Of course, everything has to be aligned with the business and just busy. But at the current time, I think that the gap of education is severe, and that where I would put more effort on. As the organization matures, as you have a better understanding, you basically set the ground to start and work more on technology and make sure that once something hits, you reduce the time to detection. You
Mm-hmm.
improve your automated incident response, and not only counting on people to go and do their panic mode. Um, but that is part of the process. I would say that at the moment it is education that is needed the most, and this process can be our society, can be the microcosmos of an organization. You were working in your organization, you start with the education, as we said, you start with the um, instant response, with all of that, and then you work towards technology and things that will allow for more automation and peace and quiet for the people to actually just work.
Do you think we will ever close the gap?
It has to be.
It's a hard question.
If we look from historic point of view, um, there are many areas that were not a thing, and then today they seem trivial.
Mhm.
So I think even though cybersecurity has been around since the first computer,
Mhm.
there is a boom that came, I would say, in the last 5 to 10 years, depends where you're sitting in the world.
Mhm.
And that boom has to be productive for something. So yeah.
On this, I have one little note that I would like to add, which is, you know, the way cybersecurity is specific is that we have an adversary on the other side that doesn't play by the rules.
Correct.
And whatever we do, they're always gonna try and find ways to screw with what we did, and then or just go completely around what we did, right? That's one thing.
Correct.
And the other
And the
thing
rule
is,
says that we have to be, because of this, ready and prepared and on guard 100% of the time, and they just need the gap of 1 minute.
yep, absolutely, yep. And the other interesting part, which maybe we'll get to at the end of this discussion as well, is things are changing, right? It's not just about what we're able to do today and what they're able to do today, but it's about new tools coming into light and new technologies, new computational capabilities that we didn't have before. And that also changes the environment, right? So it's not a stable environment as much as in some ways maybe the physical environment is, right?
Correct. So yeah, these processes, of course, disrupt the market and create new threat landscape, threat vectors, attack vectors, and they definitely have an impact. If we look on AI, if we look on quantum computing that is around the corner, so on that, definitely there is evolution that doesn't
Yeah,
seem at the moment going anywhere down. And that's, you look
yeah.
on the stock exchange, you look on everywhere, all the investments go. Everybody that wants to find a safe bet, they bet on the cybersecurity. From my point of view, personally, I do believe, I do hope that around the other corner will be some kind of um, reduction of these threats or this burden on the business, because
Mm-hmm.
when you really look at how much the business has to and it has to carry in cybersecurity in order just to facilitate the business, it's at the moment
Mm-hmm.
it's substantial, and it gets more. And I don't necessarily just mean money. There's other solutions, and not everything is big checks, but even in just the efforts and the time that they need to invest into that, and the expertise that they have to get, even inside into the boards and into the um, risk committees. It's really substantial. So I do hope that in the future we will see some time that it relaxes. If it is to judge by the politics and other processes that happens in the world, it's not that corner is not on the road that we are currently.
It's not going in the right direction, is it? Unfortunately. So I have a technology question. When it comes to ransomware, which has been or has risen significantly over the last few years in terms of value and impact, um, what do you think is the way to battle ransomware when it comes to tech? Um, is it more about optimizing what we already have, or do you think that the answer lies more in innovation?
I think that innovation is still needed. The current solutions that we have technologically wise, they're not sufficient. Um, I'm sitting, as you mentioned, in South Africa, which has enormous amount of activity of threat actors.
Mm-hmm.
We almost see them in the streets as you go. It's very difficult to get to a gym without understanding who is from the people around you, out of some kind of syndicates, some kind of activities. Only in the last week there was a major operation that ended up arresting, I think it was 1,006 individuals around the world, but the core, the focus of it was here in South Africa. So
Mm-hmm.
we have huge amounts of activities, and you can see that they are caching it. It gets to the point that to many young people that looks like the career they would like. Because I don't see
Mm-hmm.
any other career that gets you at the age of 25 to drive a 4x4 Lamborghini. Okay. And we do see that here. It's either that or a G Wagon, Mercedes G Class, lots of luxury vehicles. And that definitely is the proof that there's not yet a good enough solution. So the innovation has to
Mm-hmm.
carry on. We have to be more creative about it and find something that will end up draining this well and get it dry, so it is not looked by so many people as their wishful career.
Mm-hmm. This is actually very interesting. Uh, I have been seeing myself that cybersecurity has become a topic that people just know about, right? It's not anymore a topic that you kind of like maybe have heard about it, but have like totally no idea that it either exists or what to even imagine. People see it in the movies, right? People have talked to their friends about it and stuff like that. It's become, but this is a very interesting perspective from the other side of this. Is it has become mature enough, uh, the adversarial world, and the amount of money that is in it is mature enough that you see new generations coming up and seeing the, and let's say this is going to sound weird, but seeing the fruits of the work of the hackers, right? Like
Yeah,
seeing where it can get you, and it's a very dangerous thing.
indeed.
Kind of
They
reminds me
say
of
they say in criminology that as long as there's no real fear to be caught, and usually they say that the punishment is not that important, but I would say that in these amounts of because it is crime syndicates, then the punishment is does play a role. But it is very, if they not dropping the numbers significantly, because they will catch more and they will show that it is only a matter of time until you get caught. I mean, in most of the countries in the world, you do know that if you take someone else's life, you basically start a clock on your own life. It's only a matter of time until will be caught, and your life will not be the same as ever before. Some places there's death penalty, some places life sentence, but you know that it's only a matter of time until you will get caught. There's very, very few that happened to produce the perfect crime. At the moment in cybersecurity, there are many that manage to produce a perfect crime. That's where I think our problem is.
I yes. Unfortunately, I have to say I myself see uh, something you mentioned before, the way world politics is evolving. I'm not sure if it's helping the situation or not.
Yeah.
Because if you're in jurisdictions where you can't be reached or you're even enforced or reinforced um, to do certain things, then it's not really the incentives aren't really lining up.
There are countries. I just been in a discussion last week of a brave um, professional from Know Before that
Mm.
came forward and shared their experience that you probably saw um, on the news, where they ended up hiring a North Korean without knowing that he
Yeah,
is a North Korean, obviously,
right.
and that is someone that is focused on awareness, etc., etc. I think, first of all, if it happened to any company, it's better be them, because they can at least write the right training going forward from that. So it's not only their lessons learned, it's everyone, and that's
Yep.
a great advantage for everybody. But they have shared a little bit of the facts behind the scenes from the North Korea ecosystem, where the country at the moment focuses they basically their GDP is from cybersecurity criminals. That
Mhm.
if you are a little bit talented, they identify you right at school. You get the tools, you get the access to the internet, which is not something that in North Korea anyone has,
Normally
but
get. Hmm.
they have that, and they bring in income stream to the country.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Hopefully, you know, well, I don't know. We'll see. I was gonna say, hopefully, we find a way
I
to
hope
get this
I try
aligned, but
always to
unfortunately,
see.
that's. I don't
I
think
try to
history.
keep optimistic always.
Yeah. Anyway, coming back to ransomware. Um, in case of a ransomware event that happens to have, uh, well, in case of a ransomware event, let me just say this: should companies pay or not?
We can debate for very long time. I always say someone, when I consult or train on incident response, when it comes to that question, I say, put this aside until it's real time. You have no idea what you will do.
Right.
So when we sit here and talk around a cup of coffee, I would obviously say, don't pay. Do everything in your capability not to pay. But if we take the Las Vegas strike or strip, sorry, the Las Vegas strip, um, and the two hotels there that were both attacked by the same hackers, which
Mhm.
I was very happy to read. I think it was last week that
Mhm.
the main guys were caught and facing justice at the moment.
Right.
But MGM and Caesar's Palace, they were both attacked by the same guys using kind of the same tools. Caesar's Palace chose to pay. MGM chose not to pay. MGM ended up recreating their infrastructure from Entra down to everything. If I'm not mistaken, okay, so completely down they'd been for, I think I stick under correction, about 2 weeks, and then started to bring up systems again, but took them months to actually get everything recreated.
Mhm.
Caesar Palace suffered no consequences other than the payment.
Mhm.
So if you take that as a lab experiment, you would say definitely pay. But if we promote that, then we actually shooting ourselves in the head, not even in the foot, because we are promoting this as then a very lucrative careers. We are hurting ourselves and making basically the criminals very, very happy. So when we build our strategy, we need to build it as if we have a strict restriction that ransom will never be paid. And hopefully that will hold. And if we done a good job, we know what to do, and we have in the incident response planning how to bring back the business. And we did also paid the attention on the important parts, so that will be a smooth process. We practiced it on time. We even done all of the tests that possible to close the gaps and actually prevent. But if we didn't, then ransom will end up being paid because the business has to carry on. And the hackers know to make their calculation, and they even negotiate. And if you explain to them that the amount that they asking, and they do it sometimes when they ask enormous amount for a small business, because in Google, when they searched for the business, they realized they found some listed company with the same name, and they actually ended up attacking the corner shop. So they reduce, and it is somewhat something we can do to get the business back on its feet and going. But by all means, we shouldn't plan for it. We should never allow for that. And there was a very heated debate that I took part of
Mhm.
exactly under that question. And the kind of conclusion that we got was that the best way to look into regulation that will prevent the ransom from being paid so easily would be actually not to ban the businesses to pay. Businesses has to carry on, and they might get to the situations where they need to pay,
Mhm.
but ban the insurance companies from paying, because for
Mhm.
them that's a cold calculation. They took the calculator
Yeah.
and they realized we better pay the ransom and not pay the losses or the expenses of the company to recover. I
Mhm.
think
Mhm.
there is where most of the ransoms are paid, and this is where we can flip the coin, ban from them to take part in it, and that means that they will end up paying higher costs and chasing the companies more to be compliant and prepared for the day.
So I was just going to mention before you said this, I was going to mention I had a conversation on the podcast with Jeff Headley. Who was on the show, I think 2 episodes ago, and he basically said, "Well, what if we make the companies pay?" And listening to you, I'm thinking, shouldn't it be both? Is it? I understand what you're saying. I understand you
I
have
don't think that we have the tools to actually ban a business from paying itself,
right.
because they will just write it differently.
I mean,
You will ban the actual
yeah,
payment, and they will
you
pay
can't.
a recovery service.
It's not enforceable. Yeah.
Exactly. Where the insurance companies are so regulated. They audited. There's always a regulator specifically for that sector within the country. It's much easier to enforce on them,
Yeah.
and they
And I
are
guess
actually at the end
the
of the day
result,
they pay the most.
the result will be you would probably uh, end up uh, putting the burden on the MSBs, sorry, SMBs much more at the end of the day, because there's all these ways that you can figure out how to figure out how the payment isn't actually going to be a ransomware payment, and no one's ever going to find out that this thing happened.
Yeah, and I think from in places, okay, so it is in some states and some countries, it is a felony even to pay ransom because you support terrorism, because you money laundering laws and all sorts of stuff like that. But it's very, very difficult to actually enforce on a business owner that he sees his business came to a stop and he can't pay that. I would say even hospitals. We saw attacks where hospitals had to stop servicing, close the theaters so they can't operate during an incident. And that means lives directly. To force on them not to pay is probably not something that we can do.
Thank you. So in situations where an organization is uh, buying cybersecurity services from a managed cybersecurity services provider, um, and let's say, for the sake of the argument, that they are, um, so that we don't get into contractual stuff, let's say, that they are actually following the procedures and that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And in case there still is a breach, who should bear the cost? Should it be the organization or should it be the managed cybersecurity services provider?
I think it's always and forever will be the organization. Um, just first of all, I mean, MSP should protect itself on the contract with a limited liability. Um,
Okay.
and lots of times, the MSP that provides services to a giant company is not a giant company itself. And when it will come to um, losses that the huge company incurred, it is something that is not in the league of the MSP to even think about. So,
Mm-hmm.
in the same way that when you buy Windows, it comes with terms and conditions that the most I think they liable for is the cost of Windows. That's also the right test when it comes to MSPs. They are liable for, I would say, up to the fees that they paid. A little bit if it is negligence, if it is pure negligence, obviously you have different route. But and yeah, for that there's other insurances and everything that should protect them, or that they should take. But if we look on a normal business process, it's funny that we say normal business process when it comes to uh, incident and ransomware and all of that. So we also kind of normalized, or I normalized ransomware, at least in the language. But I think the organization can't transfer the liability. It can't transfer its obligations. It is outsourcing specific tasks, but
Mm-hmm.
the responsibility for the data, the responsibility is far in front of the law and in front of the losses of finances is purely on the business.
Okay. The next topic is close to the heart. Password policies. There's different standards around password policies. Some say you should have a password policy that will have users change their password every now and then. Others say you should have a password that you don't have to and never change. Which side are you on?
In the middle. No, you can't. We said not middle. So I would say that it's better and safer if to not change. Okay, when you start to annoy from experience, when you start to annoy the users with change your passwords often and all of that, they find their creative way to not do it or to generate summer 2024 and then autumn 2025 and then etc etc. So and that was a good example because otherwise it's just in what number are we of that password 1 2 3 4 at the end. It's very easy to make the change of password meaningless. More
Mm-hmm.
important, I would say, work with the users to be aware, implement with them a tool. It has, no one can remember anymore the passwords, and writing it is definitely not an option. So password managers or access managers, if it comes a little bit further, when it used to be called password managers, but then lots of times what we end up putting in it is passkeys, which is not really a password, but as long as you implement a tool that they can utilize, and password is unique for each service and service. I would say focus changing passwords as part of your response to a breach. There was a breach, there was a password, you change that one. First of all, then it gives the full attention to that incident of a password breach. And it doesn't annoy the users with endless changing that really doesn't mean anything, because who said that that password is less or more guessable than other password? They will end up creating other passwords, and if they share passwords, for example, you will end up that they communicate it in other open forms. Rather make everything in the correct tool, make sure that the tool supports the business. If you have need to share credentials to some kind of services, make sure that it is powered by a good password manager, preferably that even keeps a log and reports to you when a password is accessed, not only when it's changed. So then you can actually monitor that.
Mm-hmm. So the other, you said when a password is shared or used in multiple instances, and that's actually the next question that I had, because that is a thing people do, and there isn't really an enforceable way to make sure users don't reuse the password that they've been provided or that they've created for in a system that's managed by the organization in another application or website or whatever that is totally out of scope of the organization. And this also can be a way that a credential is um, uh, basically exposed, right? Now, if this happens, who should be liable?
I would say what's the first of all, what's the meaning of this liability? Because when we look for what's the remedy we're looking out of saying A or B is liable, that kind of will lead us into the solution to it. But with a right, first of all, just explaining what I meant with shared. I meant, for example, not every device or not every system supports multiple users. You might have a router or a switch or any kind of network device that has one admin password, and that is it. And that password is being used then by group of people that has the credential to or the authority to change configurations on the router. So sharing this password is something that the business is required, and there are tools that allow for that to be done and logged when every password is accessed, or that password every time it accessed, for example, and by whom. So you take basically and you elevate the security of that device by protecting the password with another tool. But on the other hand, when it's reusing of password, when a user takes that password and uses it somewhere else because it's comfortable, because he thinks that he remembers it already, that I would say is a no-no, that the user has to be held accountable somehow. If it's I don't know how many users ended up being fired because of cybersecurity misconduct that didn't end with an incident. Probably very few. But as we said many questions ago, I focus on people. I focus on education. I think that is where our strength is. So these users have to be educated again and again and again for the consequences of taking your password and using it for Netflix because you remember it and it looks to you that that would be a safe option not to forget the password. And if you use the right tool, there's no chance you can remember all of these 20 characters with all of the different types of character groups within it that would minimize that attractiveness of remember password and using it anywhere else.
Yeah. I do want to ask you about trends. One trend that is still sort of quite meaningful in the networking security space is zero trust. Is zero trust to you more of a buzzword, or is it something that you see carries weight and is important as a networking security strategy, let's say?
So first of all, I don't think there's anything else. Zero trust, if you actually go to the core of it, that is everything that we have been doing all along. Yes, the difference, if you go to the founder of Zero Trust and to his talks about really what is the major difference in the Cisco router where he started, I think firewall, not a router, where he changed the trust levels, and that way it all comes from. But today, if you go and you check from certifications, from, for example, the I think it's CCZT, if I'm not mistaken, the certificate of competence of zero trust. Yeah, that is of
Mhm.
CNA, for
Mhm.
CSA, sorry. So if you look into that, it encompasses in it so many concepts that we've been talking and we've been doing it all along. So that would be the need to know basis, the least privilege, the assumed breach, lots of things that we built already so many systems around it.
Mhm.
Zero trust at some point got from the president of the United States a nice stamp that it became a presidential order to
Mhm.
at least I think federal organizations, and it's a definite boost for that framework to be adopted as a standard. But if you go and you check the rest of the standards, they have a lot of the concepts of zero trust already.
Mhm.
However, yes, when it comes to networks, I still see organizations that write rules that everything is allowed internally or that don't understand why they need to at all restrict the outgoing traffic of the network.
Mhm.
In that sense, yes, zero trust is very much needed and is not just it's not just a buzzword. It is the way forward in my point of view.
Mhm. So just so that I understand, what you're basically saying is a lot of the concepts have been around for a while. Um, and what zero trust has done mostly is to centralize the focus on the right ways of doing things, so that organizations can adopt it as a strategy.
Yeah,
Would you say that's right? Okay.
that's right. But on the other hand, I would say, just as a um, kind of in brackets, that term is being added to many products that you really don't understand why they do that, why that is. So in that sense, yes, it's a buzzword and an overused buzzword. You find a mix. For example, I don't want to mention names, but one of, for example, the endpoint security solutions, they write everywhere on everything that they do zero trust, but what they actually mean is that they cover 0-day vulnerabilities.
Uh,
So what that has to do with zero trust? They don't actually
know what
enforce
it means.
on they don't enforce on the endpoint anything to do with zero trust, but yet they use that everywhere on their brochures, etc.
Yeah.
So yes, there is an overutilization of that
Yeah.
buzzword, but if you really look into the pillars and what's building zero trust, it's kind of, I would say, been there forever, but now the network layer is joining. So if we didn't look or were not able to implement need to know basis on the fact that you have visibility to the asset. So if you don't need the asset, you will not have any visibility to its existence, for example. That's a new concept of zero trust that is very good and adds a lot to our resilience or our prevention layer. But lots of its concepts, if we're not looking specifically on the technical layer, then zero trust is nothing new, and it's what we promote many years already.
Okay, thank you. So another term that is being thrown around as a buzzword is AI. And I am interested to hear your thoughts when it comes to AI in cybersecurity. Do you think that for the industry, is it more of an enabler for us cybersecurity professionals, or do you think it's more of an enabler for adversaries? And which ways do you expect the scales to tip because of AI?
Yeah. So that's very interesting because it's on both ends on or anything that embrace AI. Basically, it's a accelerator of everything that you do.
Mhm.
If I go back again to the talk that I mentioned from Know Before, from the lady from Know Before, which is actually name credits are due. It's Anna Collard.
Mhm.
So she had a great talk that I had a privilege to hear. So if she mentions, for example, that it kind of divided the adversaries world into it's in so it was mentioned in South Africa, so to the savannah. So you have the lions and you have the eagles, etc., and it gets to the bottom where you have the hyenas,
Mhm.
and that's, I would say, the opportunistic hackers. That's the script kiddies. If we look on what AI does at the moment in that side of the world or the adversaries side, it gave the hyenas the capabilities of the lions.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. So today, a
Mhm.
script kiddie is able to generate an effect of a room full of hackers with one command to an AI engine that
Mhm.
attacks instead of him, or at least from a reconnaissance point of view.
Mhm.
But on the other side, if we look on the defensive cyber, then lots of money been thrown into the development, and many tools have AI capabilities within them, but they come at very high price at the moment. So on one side, the development is done open source, free, and given to everybody that just want to harm. And on the defensive side, lots of technologies being held back. Can't blame companies that would like to earn from their development. So that's at the moment, I think, is where the effect of AI is not balanced in cybersecurity. It, at the moment, I think, helps more the side of the adversaries.
So before we wrap up, Dvir, I want to ask you if you could give one piece of advice to mid-sized businesses to help them prioritize the way they do cybersecurity, what would it be?
Okay. I'd say, first of all, listen to the business. Connect everything that you do to the business. You always have to remember that that's the reason everything exists in your context. So when cybersecurity professionals forget that link, that's where everything goes up. So I would say if anyone wants to promote a sustainable, consistent improvement, always start with the business, map everything that you do to the business, map it to the risks of the business, assets, etc. That will get you far, and that will give you, if something is not being done today or is not possible during the current quarter, you will catch it up again in the next quarter. That is, I would say, the most important. The second, from data, from privacy point of view, I think privacy is not being used enough as a driver for cybersecurity enhancement or adoption. But if you look at that as the why of everything that we do, because we care for the data we start with caring for the customer, then we understand that we can't care for the customer without caring for the data and protecting it, etc. And we get to the privacy. So if we look at that and we don't store data that we don't need / allowed to keep. Many of the incidents that ended up going out of control was because organizations did not purge data, did not get rid of data when the purpose of its capturing was fulfilled. If you only store what you need to store and allowed to store, and you connect your efforts to the activities of the business, you're really on the right way. And even if something goes wrong, you will not end up getting a huge repercussion from regulators and other bodies. That, I think, is kind of the essence. And from that, look into technologies and tools and things that can assist further. But these two ideas, I think, is the beginning of everything.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing today. That was a great discussion. I had a good time. I hope you did too.
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed. It was great.
For anyone else listening, make sure to tune into other episodes. We'll be talking to other cyber experts that have been in this industry for some time and know what they're talking about. Dvir, I look forward to having another discussion sometime down the road in the future. and see you later.
Thank you very much. Cheers.